Hi everyone, today we are working on the complex organic object, and an organic object, as you know, is something that is either alive or was formerly alive, such as an apple or a lemon or a pear, those type of things, fruits, vegetables. Those are all organic objects, human beings even. But with this complex organic object, it's going to be okay to use a manufactured object such as a shoe, and that's what I'm going to be using today because and I'm going to be using a shoe that was made out of organic material, so it's leather. And what happens with these objects is they will take on the shape of an organic object. They'll take on that irregular surface contour. So that's what we're working with. Here we go. Hi everyone, this is where I am starting my drawing today. I've already sharpened all of my pencils. I've got a nice little brush here. That's what I use to brush off my eraser debris. I've got a couple erasers with me, my pink pearl. I've got my Mars white plastic, and I've got a nice stick eraser. I've already done the sketch stage of my drawing. I did that in class with you guys, and I showed you how to use the sketch grip and sketch out the big large shapes. And now I went to step 2 after that, and I've switched from my sketch grip and gone over to just a regular pencil grip and modified some of my contours and added these little shoelaces here, and I'm going to finish that process here now. What I'm going to be doing is cleaning up these lines even more. So I've got my eraser here, and I'm getting rid of the excess lines that were left behind from the sketch stage, and now I'm just going to clean those up. I'm erasing the lines that I definitely don't want, and because that's the nature of drawing, is that's what you want to do, is you want to go in first, do your sketch, and then go back through and modify that. And you want to make sure when you're doing your initial sketch, you do it light enough so that way you do have room to erase. So I'm here in my studio. I'm just going to wipe off all that excess debris. I've got lots more that I need to do down here. I've got a dark mark there. So I'm just going to take my workhorse of a pink eraser and erase that line instead of the little delicate line that the click eraser or the pen eraser gives me. I wanted to make sure I kept my shoe on a horizontal plane. There is a slight angle to my shoe. You can see that I'm drawing, and that's noted by, you see that I've got a little bit of the heel showing, the inside of the heel, so it shows that it's not entirely just in profile. There's just a little tiny tilt to it, and that's what accounts for this part of the shoe dipping slightly below this horizontal line that I established here. And so I checked that just to make sure it's accurate and keep that nice balance to my shoe so it looks as if it's sitting on an actual horizontal surface like the one it's actually sitting on. So I've got more erasing here to do. I'm going to go in with my big pink eraser. I like to call this my workhorse, as you've already heard me say, and that's because it just removes more of the graphite off of the paper a little quicker than with the other erasers. So I'm just going through there and cleaning up that line. I'm going to get back in and refine it too with another set of pencils. So those were different lines where I had considered the contours of the shoe might be, but when I double checked them, I felt like they belonged in slightly different positions. So there's a lot of my major secondary lines are now gone. Get in here and get that one out. All right, that looks pretty good. Pretty good. And I keep both my brush to wipe off of my debris and this a paper towel, but I also use a paper towel to protect my paper from my own hands, to keep my paper clean, and only the marks that I actually want on my paper, those are the only ones that I want to be visible in my drawing here. So I'm erasing everything and keeping my paper protected at the same time so I don't put down additional marks. So again, with the brushing this off, this I want to get in there and get a little more refined, so I'm going in with my click eraser. Here I want to get more refined, so I'm going in again with my click eraser, in here with my click eraser, in here cleaning these lines up, going in with my click eraser and getting rid of that. There's a few too many lines. This one is still smoky in here, so I'm going to clean that one up. This is where the contour of that shoe passed through before I put in the detail of the lace, the shoelace there. And just going back in and cleaning up those lines. This is one I want to get rid of. It's a little too high, and then I've reestablished those already down there. Those are still really smoky, and I'm going to be going in and cleaning up those lines as well, because I don't want to leave them that smoky. I want them a lot more crisp. So cleaning up these lines. There's a little bit of detail that I'm going to need to put back in there. The contour of that shoe, that tip of the shoe, or not necessarily the tip of the shoe, the tip of that detail on the shoe. So that line is still too thick and smoky. And going back in and cleaning up these lines. And I'm cleaning these up before I put my cross contours in. So this way I don't just put my cross contour lines anywhere. I have all of my nice little details in my shoe mapped out first, even mapping out the inside of the shoe. So there we go. Still cleaning up lines here. This is, oh, that's the one I want to erase. I've erased them both, but I'll go back and reestablish it. And again, with the cleaning up the lines in here, because these lines are still really smoky, and I don't want to leave them smoky since this is a contour line drawing. I want to go back in and leave them nice and crisp. The toe in here is still a smoky line because that's still not entirely not entirely left in the sketch state, but I have not gone back in and completely modified it yet either. So that's a lot more clean. I'm going to get in here and clean up this in here too and get those lines a little more solidified. Go in here, erase that contour line of the shoe from the, because it wouldn't pass through the shoelace like that. It was just like that because I had drawn it first without the shoelace being described. And this is still too thick in here, so I'm going to just go in here and erase a lot of this in here. I think I'm going to erase this too. There's still going to be enough of a residual mark there. I'm not going to erase it so much that I can't see what I did put there before. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a residual mark there and go back in and reestablish that with one of my pencils, like maybe my B. I've got a 2H here, so I might put that in with my 2H to get a nice crisp line. So cleaning up those lines, I'm going back in with my 2H here and just making those lines a little cleaner. I think I'm going to erase some of them just so I can reestablish them just a little cleaner. And I'm just going to lightly erase all of this just so I leave a residual of the line. So just there's like a little shadow of what was there. But this gets rid of all of that smoky, sketchy lines. And then I'm just going to go back in with my 2B and make this just really nice and clean, give this really clean line. So you see there's still a really nice outline there. I haven't ruined my drawing, but I have given myself an opportunity to go in and get really nice, clean lines. So just refining those lines, looking at this here, that moves around like that. I've got a really nice sharp pencil. I actually picked up my 2B and that's darker than I want to go with. So let's try this again and go with my 2H. So I don't want to go with my 2B because that's just going to be a little darker and smokier than I want. If I want to firm up those lines after, I can go back in with one of my darker pencils and get that completed. So that's an option. And I'm putting a little bit of an idea of gesture in here so that I can have a little bit of an little artsiness looking to it. There's that nice layer detailed on the back of the shoe, so I'm describing that, doing the nice idea in irregular contour. Since this is an organic object that we're drawing, I get down to here to the heel and it's got a little bit of space where it goes around the bottom of the shoe like that. Getting in here, just addressing it from a different angle where I can get my line nice and crisp the way I want it to look. Getting in there, making that line really nice and crisp. That's as far as I want to go at the moment, and I'm going to go back in here and get these lines placed where they belong. So there's just a little bit of a excess material right there where I can see a little bit of that side plane of the shoe. And again, going back in and cleaning up those lines, because even now I put them in a little jankier than I wanted them to be. Go back in there, clean that up really nice. Okay, then going in here and reestablishing this nice contour line that describes the heel of the shoe, and just get in there and do it really nice and clean. I'm moving around here, going back in here, really nice and clean, nice and clean. That's a little disconnected. So get back in there and establish a really nice line there and clean that up. This is where there's that extra piece in the sole of the shoe. It comes around and it joins thoroughly with the heel and becomes a nice little extra wedge of the shoe. Going back in, just getting that line really nice and clean. Even looking at the spacing of my lines just to make sure that this space is consistent and it doesn't narrow. It just stays a nice same thinness and thickness the entire length of its shape. All right, go like this, and this is getting that side of that heel in there. All right, that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to go in and reestablish some of these contours. Get in here and move that around like this. It's a lot easier to draw when I don't have to, when I'm not filming it, when I'm not recording it, because I'm much more free to move around. And when I'm recording, I have to be a little more restricted in my movement so I don't get in the way of the camera, get my head in the way of the camera and block it. This comes around and disappears back into the side of that shoe. It actually goes all the way back here, and there's a little bit of a volume there at that back. Let me, all right, it goes all the way back like that. Okay, that looks good, and I'm happy with that. It had a little bit too much depth to that space before. Cleaning up that line. All right, now I'm ready to go back in. I'm going to establish that back edge here. That looks good. Then here I'm going to go in, and this is just a little bit lower than I had it before. Go in, make a skip over where the shoelace is. I'm going to describe that now. This is in there a little on the sideways like that. It comes up like this, and I see a portion of the shoelace here, and then it rolls over, so it goes flat here, and then I'm seeing the front of that shoelace. So I'm seeing it from a different angle, and it overlaps like that. So I'm going to go ahead and show that overlap and put in that dimension that the shoelace is. Take that all the way down. There we go. And when it gets down here, this is about where the fabric part of it ends, and it gets tied into the little tip that's plastic that keeps it from unraveling. All right. Get in here and refine that line. So it's also a little different drawing when I've got a little bit of damage to my elbow, so every once in a while they pop and send my arm a different direction. So yay, that's fun. But just compensate for it, no problem. All right, erase that. Then go in, and I'm going to get this line in here a little on the nicer, cleaner side. There we go. And putting in that feature of the shoe. This can get a little confusing because it makes it seem like when I get into doing the cross contour line, it seems like the cross contour line should follow that, but they're going to follow the overall shape of the shoe. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to take this down here, and then we've got another shoelace that is about here on the shoe, and it does that same type of thing where I see one side, then it loops over on itself and moves down this direction. So I need to clean up that line. That's where my elbow did that fun little dip thing. So there we go. And this is a little on the uneven side, and that feels a little more even that way, so it feels like it's got the same volume all the way down that line. Let me get back in there and clean that up a little more. And this, let's see, just looking closer at that, what's going on with my shoe. Okay, so I see what's happening here now, and that does flatten out there. This comes here and it actually goes, and this is a lot more horizontal in through there. There's another shoelace back here that I'm going to articulate. I missed it before, and that's okay. So this comes down like this, and then there's another shoelace back here. So I'm going to leave that back here, but that goes through like that. Then this comes over here, and there is this shoelace here also, and this one comes this direction, and flattens out through here, makes this funny little point, and it rests in a hole that looks sort of like that. So I'm going to put that like that. Then it turns and goes back, has a little bit of this happening where it turns on itself, and then it turns on itself again and goes back. So it's got several different little things happening there, different shifts in its in plane. So this goes out here and comes down around like that. This is going to come out a little farther like this. Then it steeply pitches down, comes back up, and this is where the shoe really takes on that idea of an organic form, because it has really taken on the form of the foot that wears it. This flattens out and through here. And there we go. Let's see here, flatten. This is a little on the round side. And I'm going to go back and clean up that line and brush off that excess. Look, I've got a mark out here. I'm going to get rid of that. Get rid of those extra marks. Clean this up. Clean up that smoky line in there. And then I'm going to describe that last little contour here. That's that detailing in the shoe. It's got like a saddle stitch in through here. Comes down here. And I'm going to try to make that the same distance from top to bottom, that hole, to run the entire length of the shoe. So it comes in through here, and there we go. So I'm going to clean up that line a little bit too. And I'm pretty happy with that. Then we've got where the this other stitching detail down here, And this comes in through here like this. Do this really nice. And I'm looking at where they intersect. I see that the front of the stitching is, or the first, or the top of the stitching rather, is in front of the side of this heel. And then if I look at the stitching here, it's almost parallel to the back edge of that heel that I can see, but there's a little room left over. So again, with trying to get these to be the same width, the entire length of the shoe. And now moving around again so I can access my paper a little better physically, because if I wasn't recording this, I would be pulling this up towards me and drawing it at different angles. But since I'm recording, I'm just a little more restricted than I normally would be. So let's see, we've got this comes back here, does a little bit of you can barely see the pattern that makes, and it comes in through here, flattens out and lumps up a little, goes in through here, and let's see where this is just going to follow that same contour, taking that up, and I'm just going to join those lines. So I overlapped it a little bit. I still have too much of my smoky lines still showing, so all right, then I go in through here, and this comes around like this, and there's that part of the shoe. I'm going to refine this line up here. So I'm doing these nice outline contour lines, describing the shape of the shoe with contour lines. Then even when I go back in, I might wind up playing with the line quality, the thinness and the thickness of the lines and the darkness of them, so that way I add even more, a little bit more of a sense of dimension to my drawing. Go back in here and clean up that line because it's still too smoky. I just really want the one line to show through and not have too many lines. Let's look at the tip of that shoe a little more. I do have a little bit of a ridge that comes out here, and it disappears about right there where I can't see it anymore. So I'm going to put that extra formation in there, and it tapers down and disappears at this edge. And then this moves out a little bit, rounds out, and comes down.
They don't need him with the guitar.
Okay.
Is that him in the suit in the background dancing?
All right.
I mean, if he's in the suit background.
All right, here we go. I'm describing those lines, going back in and making them a little tighter. And I'm going to go in here and tighten that up all over again too, and tighten that up again too. All right, there is my contour line drawing. This is a little funky back here. I'm going to tighten this line up back here, and all right, there we go. There we go, and there we go. So we're going to be working on this complex organic object, and as you can see up here in the corner, that is the shoe I'm working on, and that's a still life I have set up. And I'm going to keep that photo up, and you can look and follow along what I'm doing with the cross contours here. So when we're doing the cross contours, you want to think about making sure that most of the cross contour lines are going to be at a 90-degree angle to each other for the most part. If they get a little steeper than that, then that suggests some type of pinch or warp in the surface. So with that in mind, let's start. I'm going to start my first contour line here across this middle of the shoe. That's just because that's where I feel the most comfortable with going. I feel like that's going to set the stage for the relationship of the vertical versus the horizontal lines. And then, using that term vertical and horizontal is using that relatively loosely, because these lines are not necessarily going to be vertical. That's just the main direction, is that for the most part they're going to be relatively vertical. And so I'm going to just go in here now and lightly place these cross contour lines. I'm doing my vertical lines, and I'm still working with my 2H because I don't really want to go too dark or too light. I just want to get that mid-tone in there and start establishing the shape of the shoe this way. When I go down here, it comes and it tucks a little underneath, and where it starts rolling under that shoe. I'm going to go back in and erase some of these lines as they go over the detailing in the shoe. So I just wanted to put that one there so you can see that it is relatively continuous. I'm going to do it just slightly offset because that detail is just a little raised. But I wanted to just put that first one down there so you could understand that relationship. And here I'm going to just follow that same contour. I'm going to be using a relatively evenly paced intervals between my line because it's regularly spaced. It feels like that these they really don't shift in contour, surface contour, to any kind of great extent where it gets a little closer just yet here in this area. So again, coming down through here and tucking it in just a little where it turns underneath, and at the bottom of that where that leather joins the sole, the side of that shoe joins the sole. So going up here, this still travels fairly vertical. When it gets up here underneath the shoelaces, it starts turning in space just a little because that is where it starts wrapping over the top of the foot. This is about where that next line comes through. It's going to come through almost parallel to that line there, and it is going to travel down back behind this shoelace, so I'm not going to be seeing it through there. And then I'm going to come down here and put this down here again and do this nice tuck. This is a little bit more extreme in the angle. This is where the top of that shoe really starts turning the other direction and starts going a little bit on the horizontal side. So I'm going to describe that with a deeper diagonal line here at where it comes through here, and then it shifts plane and starts traveling down vertical again. I'm going to take into account a little bit of how this shoe turns a little in through here and take that in and tuck that there. This line probably travels about here, and it's going to come out the way I have this spaced. It's going to come out about right here in the shoelace, come out here, and it hits this area in here, and this is about where it starts to turn. This is flat and travels over the top of the foot, and then it starts to turn here and travels over the side of the foot and goes fairly vertical from here. It moves down through like that and tucks back in on itself. Again, this one comes out and goes at a fairly strong diagonal. It shifts planes in through here and comes down fairly straight in through here. This comes out in through here, and about right in through here is where it shifts directions and comes down in through there. This comes out about to here, and it hits that ridge right there and goes from there and shifts direction and goes fairly straight down here. It curves a little down and through there. So I feel like that's fairly accurate of that part of the shoe. This is going to follow that same basic rhythm. This is a lot more, this one starts about here, and these are going to be a lot more vertical in through here. It bubbles a little bit in through there and doesn't quite turn quite that much, and does come in through here and tucks underneath there. This edge goes through about right here, and it's still, again, it's going to come down through about there and will end there, and that's it'll end behind that detail. This comes in fairly straight in through here. This is about where the heel is. But what I've got happening here is a little bit more of plane changes here. So this one, because that's where that ankle resides in the shoe, it comes out here and bows a little bit like that, and then goes back in on itself there, comes back down a little bit like this, and it goes down and around and tucks in through there again. This goes through here. There is a contour in through here, so I'm going to start indicating a little bit of that contour by shifting the direction of those lines. This goes a lot more vertical, so I'm going to just do that in through there. Again, where this comes and it contours in through here and moves back up through there. This comes down here and starts getting really nice and round, and because you see that the back of that shoe is round in it, and these contours are going to agree with that contour to a certain degree. It's going to be something of a reflection of that same contour. So I'm going to go back in through here, and because this is actually, I've got a, it does do a couple shifts in through here where it goes up, and then actually when it gets here, the it moves slightly out like that again, instead of going back in on itself. These because the foot and the ankle and the shoe has shifted the contour, and it's not quite so straight up and down anymore. This comes down like this. It's got a little bit of a direction like this, then it shifts and goes back on itself again. Same thing here, where there's still a little bit of a bend in through this part of the shoe, because the again, just a movement. Wearing shoes, they're going to conform to the shape of the foot. Back here, this goes fairly straight here. It does not shift contours, and it does come back in on itself like that. I am going to go in through here and let's see. This is just looking through here. This goes from here and goes down through there, that direction. So like I've mentioned before, you look for invitations to go darker or lighter. This right here, on the bottom of the shoe here, we've got where this part of the shoe goes into shadow. So I'm going to, this is a deeper edge than those light contour lines. So I've got some variation here, and it'll help describe space a little. This is the bottom of the shoe where it is fairly dark and goes into shadow. So I'm going to just take all of this and go much darker with this line. And then this one is also fairly dark into shadow. It falls into shadow underneath the shoe. So I'm going to go ahead and darken that up too. Here at the bottom, this line is also in shadow. This is where there is no light underneath that shoe, because it's where the shoe comes into contact with the surface of the table, the box that it's sitting on. And then this is a little on the dark side. It's darker than those contour lines, but not quite as dark as the shadowed area. I'm going to go in here. You know, I told you I've got a little bit of that, a bad elbow, and so gets a little tough for me to sometimes to make straight lines, because my elbow's not always really as stable as I'd like it to be. So I'm just tracing over these lines, making these a little darker than they were before. Going in here, making this a little darker. This is, I'm going to make this darker in through here, because this is a deeper line than the edge right now I have indicates. That falls into shadow because there's a nice big seam there. That's where the body of the shoe meets the sole of the shoe. So I'm going to go in here and darken this line too. Again, and what I'm doing here is putting in that line variation. Here, these are actually two different lines. If you remember what I talked about before. That because of the perspective I'm looking at this shoe at, I've got a little bit of a ridge on the shoe here. Clean up that line, clean up that line, clean up that line, so I don't have all those janky lines all over the place, and get rid of my excess material. And wind up going back in there and cleaning up that line too. All right, that looks better. I don't want to leave all of that smokiness. So I'm going to go around here and make this a little darker too. And then I'm going to be putting contour lines in there. Go back in here, and I feel okay about making this a little bit darker too. Okay, and with my wonderful arm doing things I don't want it to do. All right, this is, I don't want that extra little notch down there, so I'm going to clean up that line. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy about that. I'm going to go in here because, again, this is a much harder edge, and I'm going to show the separation between this surface and that surface behind it by making it darker and setting up a spatial relationship between the that part of the shoe and the tongue, so the side of the shoe. I'm going in here and making this a little darker, again, to just separate it from the shoelaces. I'm going to, I think I'm going to switch back to my 2H and go in there with and make some of these lines darker, but I'm going to do it with my 2H because I know that's not going to make it as dark as my 2B would with that same amount of pressure. And then I do want to describe that little turn, so I'm going to describe that and make it really clear here on this drawing. Come down like this. Then I'm going to make this a little darker. I've switched to my 2 just to indicate how it's moving into a hole. I'm going to make these darker than the contour lines around them, just to give them more presence. So that way they look like they've got, set them in a different space than the contour lines. So the contour lines don't look like they have as much mass to them as the shoelace and the shoe, because what I want is the those contour lines just to stay as if they look like they're describing the surface and they're not like stripes on the shoe. And I feel if I make the give more presence to the shoelaces by darkening them up, it's going to separate them from the cross contour lines. Okay, so that's what I'm doing in through there. I'm going to make the these lines a little darker in here to go back in and describe the shoelaces with a slightly darker line. Not as dark as some of these lines down here, but just give them a little bit more, clean them up and give them a little bit more of a crispy edge. This comes up, goes here, and flattens out, then turns that way, and then it turns back down on itself again. So it turns a couple ways there. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and keep that outline, make that a little darker, give it a little bit more form in through here than the contour lines have. So I, again, give a little bit more contrast between the contour lines and the, rather those outlines and the cross contour lines. So it helps establish their relationship in space, or their spatial relationship, if you want to think of it that way, because both of those words would be accurate. This, I'm going to give a little bit more prominence to the these details on the shoe, again, to set them out in space and add a little bit more of a contrast between them and the cross contour lines, just to give them more presence on the shoe. And then I'm going to leave it a little light in through, a little lighter in through there, just because that's how I want to be. And then here, again, just tracing these, giving them a little more presence than we had before. Same thing here. A little bit more presence. A little bit more presence. Okay, same thing in through here with a little bit more presence so they don't aren't competing for attention with the cross contour lines. You can still see the cross contour lines, but they look a lot more subdued relative to the darker lines that I've put in. Okay, now I'm going to just finish the contour lines on the shoe. I'm going to go in and put in the contour lines for the cross contour lines for this, the heel of the shoe. And those, again, they follow the contour of the shape that they're in. You see this area in here is just fairly vertical and horizontal. They do move at a slight diagonal because of their relationship with space. And these are all going to be fairly regular in through here and just take on a little bit of the shape of the heel. That moves in through there, and I'll put one more in through here. Go back in and clean these lines up because I don't want them competing for attention and making folks think that my shoe moves in a couple different directions. Going back in, and these are pretty much going to be relatively straight up and down. They don't have too much bow to them because that heel is, you know, if you look at up there in the corner, it's just fairly straight up and down. And it's a little bit of a tighter surface, so I'm not going to give it the same intervals as the other part of the surface of the shoe. And I'm just going to keep moving this across here like this because this still does have contour to it, and it goes fairly straight up and down. I'm going to go ahead and just put those lines in there to indicate they go fairly straight up and down. These move a little out to the side, so I'm going to just describe the direction that they're moving, and then I'm going to move these back down, and it's going to be where like they use those same lines, and it'll show a really nice distinct separation in the way they move in space by virtue of the direction of those lines. I'm going to try to make sure that I don't have these lines joining up with any of the lines in the body of the shoe, because again, I don't want to create a visual continuation of that surface. And that's if the lines meet up, they'll look as if it's a continuation of the surface that the lines on this side are describing. So that's why I am going to make sure those don't meet up, because it will just give it visual continuity that we really don't want at this point. These come down like this direction. These are fairly vertical. So that does just a really nice little shift in plane there. These, I'm going to put the contour lines in through here, and again, these are going to follow the lines, the same intervals, but I'm going to just have them slightly offset so they so it doesn't look too. So this is actually going to be going all the length of this now, and then these get fairly vertical. And I'm just going to offset them from the lines in the background, so, or the lines of the rest of the body of the shoe, so that way we can see that it's a slightly different surface area that we're dealing with here. And then still put that line in. That does come in through there. this line comes in through there. So this line comes in through here, this line comes in through here, this line comes in through there. Let's see. And I'm going to leave those like that. I'm going to just, again, take that same rhythm of intervals and just show that it's slightly on a different plane than the material around it. But just use that same pace. And then let's do a little bit of description of the direction the shoelace is going, and that should do the trick. I'm gonna go in here and make some of these lines darker, again, just to describe a slightly different space relationship. It gives it a little bit more depth. It emphasizes the fact that those valleys go up and down. It describes that, the relationship of that movement. This is round in here, so I'm going to just follow that round, and that goes like this. These are fairly flat in through here, so these are going to be almost a true horizontal. I'm just going in, and again, one of the things that I'm making sure is that I don't have the lines of the object in the foreground where I don't have them line up with the lines in the background, because it will conflate them and make them look as if they are on the same plane or on the same dimension, the same depth of space, and we don't want them to look as if they are on the same level in space. We want to maintain that relationship that they exist in two different spaces or two different places in space. So just putting in the final details of that contour. I feel that's okay, and then I'm just going to use that same pace for the rest of the shoelaces just to keep it congruent, and that moves fairly flat across like that, and it does change direction and goes like that. These are that direction and that direction. Then I've got one more shoelace to do. Clean that up. This goes this direction and narrows, goes like that and like that, and then back in on itself. And I feel like that is pretty much done. I've got some smudging that's happened in the meantime, and I'm going to go back in and clean those lines up, get rid of some of that smokiness in there, get rid of that smokiness in there, some of where I've smudged the graphite, dust it off with my handy dandy little brush that I use here, and I'm going to call that a day. And I feel like my shoe is completed. I've got a lovely dancing shoe here.